Hey there, this is Tim Ellis, and I am back with another one of my paintings, Vincent van Gogh, and I'm talking about why I chose to paint this artist. If you are not familiar with my artist series, I did a whole series of artist paintings where I painted artists who I felt really inspired me, influenced culture in general, influenced art history, and also were really iconic in who they were as well as what they made. And so Van Gogh is definitely one of those artists for me. And this is my painting of him behind me. I'm going to show it to you a little closer. In case something goes terribly wrong, I can redo the beginning. But I'm actually going to pull it off the wall and show you that I did use some of my metallic paint in this image. And this is one of those images that does change with the light. And just something I didn't remember to mention, a lot of these early artist series pieces are on wood panel and not canvas. So when I first started painting, I was repurposing a lot of old canvases I found, literally painting over old thrift shop paintings. And then I gradually moved into these really large wooden panel pieces. And now I am primarily painting on canvas, just because there's a lot of labor involved in painting over something or creating your own wood panels, which is what I did for these. So they have a wooden frame mounted to the back, and they're wooden panels. I actually prefer working on a rigid wooden surface. A lot of artists like the flex of the canvas because it's, as you paint, it's literally going to bounce. That drives me crazy. I like a more rigid surface, but that's just something about my own preference for the materials. So I'm going to pull this off the wall. I'm just going to show you the scale, and then we'll talk a little bit more about this guy. Okay, so here we go. So I like to just kind of sit over here so you can kind of see the scale. He's a big fellow, and you can see I've got it lit so you can see it a little bit better. All right, let's pull him off the wall here. And one of the things I wanted to show on this is literally, let's see if I can get framed up here right. As I tilt it into the light, can you see how the blue is illuminating and becoming reflective? Also this side right here, let's see if I can get a little closer here. This part is also kind of becoming luminescent with the light, which isn't as easy to show with this big lamp here. But I just wanted you to be able to see that because it really does change the way the piece looks, and it kind of comes to life as the light hits it throughout the day. So I'm going to put this back, and then we can just talk about this a little bit more. All right, so I'm going to click over to my my slideshow so we can kind of look at these pieces a little bit better. All right, so everybody knows Van Gogh. He's one of the most famous painters of all time. Apparently, if you are Dutch, you don't pronounce it Van Gogh. It's more like Van Gogh. I can't quite do the accent. My friends in Belgium are probably going, oh, it's totally wrong. But when I visited my friends in Belgium and got to go and actually go to Holland and got to see some of Van Gogh's work in the museum in Brussels, they were trying to get me to be able to say it correctly, which I epically failed, but that's okay. So Van Gogh, I'm going to say it the American way, Van Gogh is really known for this piece right behind me, Starry Night. And let me just vanish myself for a second. A lot of people, this is their favorite piece of his. I do like this piece. What I like about it is how playful it is, how animated it is. There's been this entire installation show that you can go and interact with, where there's a big Van Gogh traveling show where there's all these cool projected images and stuff, because it's just so much fun and it's so playful. But what is interesting is his work kind of has this epic sadness to it. He really was the tortured artist, and I'm going to talk a little bit about his book Letters or Letters with Theo. I'm spacing right now, but I'll put a link to it. I made it through those letters, and a lot of them are really difficult to read because he's hungry. He's trying to choose between painting one day and eating, and literally talking about like cooking his shoes and things like that in order to survive, leather shoes. And Gustav Vigeland apparently did actually eat his leather shoes when he was starving, one of my favorite sculptors. But all that to say is some really difficult times. Van Gogh was not making money during his lifetime. He was very, very fortunate if he sold a piece, and his main patron was his brother Theo. So he would write back and forth to Theo saying things like, hey, I need paints, I need pigments. And this is a time where you literally bought pigments from, I guess, like a pharmacist sort of person, and you'd grind them yourself. You'd mix them with your linseed oil, and you would make your own paint. So when you're painting with these really thick, bold lines like Van Gogh did, you're using a lot of paint. So this was important to him. The way he painted was important. He's considered an impressionist. And remember, impressionists were one of the first movements in modernism. And modernism was where artists started to break away from trying to create realism and document things, and actually began to employ their own artistic investigations. So it wasn't like artists were like, let's see, what shall I investigate? It was just something that naturally happened as they were freed from just doing portraits. Although people were still being paid to do portraits at this time, and Van Gogh is no exception. And one of the things I love about Van Gogh is his self-portraits. They're incredibly introspective. I just feel like you're drawn into his psyche. There's a lot of belief that Van Gogh had some mental illness. Some people think he had... let me pause real quick. I'm back. Anyway, some people believe he had a form of epilepsy, which controlled and changed the way he saw things, that where literally he was not imposing all these spirals and thick lines, but that's literally the way he saw. I don't know if I buy that, but it's an interesting theory. And there's several great films about his life. Lust for Life is a really great one, but there's a movie just called Vincent, and I think they're all really, really fun to watch. There's even the animated one, which I really enjoy, and I actually didn't quite make it to the end. That's still on my to-do list, and for a while it was streaming for free, but that's a great one if you can see that. I'll try to put links to as many of those as I can find when I'm all done talking about it. All right, I love his self-portraits, like I said. On the left, notice just the vibrant colors in the background and in his jacket. And you're really seeing almost a Seurat approach to pointillism, where there's little dabs and dashes of color as opposed to actual brushstrokes. But we see plenty of brushstrokes as well if you look at Starry Night on the right. So lots and lots of things to see there. So let's click ahead. All right, so here's a close-up of, here's a full shot of my painting. You can see the light a little bit better for that one. And one of the things that's interesting is there's only one or two photographs of Van Gogh that are actually known to be him. So I worked from an actual photograph as opposed to just working from his paintings, which I was tempted to do. But for this whole series, I've worked from black and white photos. At this time, if you were getting your portrait taken, they literally had a little metal bracket that they'd have you lean on to kind of keep your head straight. And I almost think we see him like kind of looking a little strange. And I'm guessing he might have had that little metal bracket behind him. And also people's eyes tended to get kind of strange because there was a long exposure time. And so you'd literally be, I don't know if it's a minute or 3 minutes, but there was a long time you would have to look into the camera and not move to get this long exposure. And so things got a little dreamy and strange. But if we back up, Van Gogh always has those elements to his self-portraits. There's a distortion. Notice his right eye is a little dropped compared to his left eye. See this in a lot of his paintings, which makes me think it was actually one of his physical features. But there's also just kind of a lumpiness to his head that you'll see. And so even in his photo, there were some elements like that. So I just included them. I did try to emulate some of his colors and brush strokes, but I didn't just try to paint it in the style of Van Gogh. I really tried to paint into the man. So that's what I was going for. And you can see as I zoom in, there's a lot of different colors and things happening. Not really in the style of Van Gogh. Like I said, elements are, but notice we're not seeing the dabs of color to the degree or the thickness where his brushstrokes were thick. This is not thick paint. All right. This painting, Irises, is actually in Los Angeles at the Getty Museum, the Getty Center, where I'm going in just a few days with my students. And this is also one of his most favorite paintings by Van Gogh fans. I am a big fan of this. I love Van Gogh's portraits and his paintings of nature. He's also known for room interiors. He painted his room and one of the restaurants where he lived adjacent to and worked. He didn't work in the restaurant, but I mean painted worked. Notice he's even got like some of the dead flowers or dying flowers. Some of they're starting to lean and wilt. And there's a lot of realism to this, but there's also kind of a flatness to it where it's similar to some of the Japanese woodcut prints that you might have seen at the time. Apparently, I learned in my art history classes that there was something called Japanism, which was the impressionists started to pick up influences from the Japanese prints because a lot of things that were shipped from Japan were wrapped in the traditional prints of the time, like hokusai and different printmakers. And that's how people started to become aware of them. They'd get their teacup out of a box or whatever and be like, wow, this print is incredible. And so that actually influenced some of the painters. And I think you are seeing some of that here. So notice there's kind of a flatness to the green. There's only like 3 different greens used in the flowers here. So we're not really worried about photorealistic tones and things like that, but there is kind of a playful, cartoonish element to a lot of Van Gogh's work that I really like. There's not an overall attempt to render realistically, but there's kind of an essence of what you're looking at that's captured in his work that I think is just so exciting, and it really pulls you into his work and makes you just want to get into his mind, which is, I think, why people are so intrigued. And by the way, apparently he died of a gunshot wound to the stomach, and there's a lot of conjecture as to whether it was self-inflicted or as to whether he was murdered. And one of the more recent, I think it's the film Vincent, portrays that maybe he was actually murdered. So who knows? Okay, room interiors. Let me get out of here so you can really see these, and the night cafe, street scene. So look at the colors in these. I mean, it's just your intensity is turned all the way up. And like I said, there's not really an attempt to capture realism, but there's kind of an alternate reality portrayed in these, which is, I think, one of the reasons some people think that his perception was actually a little askew from epilepsy. I don't know if that's true or not, but it does make us wonder, because you don't see a lot of these colors in many other painters' work. But Gauguin used a lot of this same palette. And, you know, literally, because you're buying your own pigments, it's possible that they shared pigments, because these two guys lived together for a while and actually, apparently, like, got in big arguments, possibly came to blows. I'm trying to remember from the letters to Theo, but I'm pretty sure they got in some actual fisticuffs, which I love that term. My fist to your cuff. But, you know, who knows? But apparently they really got under each other's skin, and, you know, initially were big admirers of each other's work, but apparently Gauguin was a little bit of a snob and kind of put down Van Gogh's work. And wow. Anyway, they could have literally been like, hey, could you give me some of your yellow ochre to grind into my burnt sienna? You know, I don't know. And they could have even, you know, taken turns mixing colors. We just really don't know. But you'll see these reds, yellows, and a lot of these other colors in Gauguin's paintings. I don't know. But I love the intensity and the playfulness. And don't you just want to know what's going on in that room? And the animated Van Gogh film, which I can't think of the name right now, but I'll look it up after and I'll put a link to it. it's just this magical world and every single frame of that was painted by an artist, and they literally animate all of the frames together, and it's just outrageous. So I actually just paused and Googled that. It's called Loving Vincent is the name of the animated film. It was driving me crazy. I wasn't going to be able to focus. Let's go to the next one. Oh, by the way, I did want to mention the upper painting here is actually Van Gogh's bedroom. And I'm not 100% sure, but I think that he actually shared that place with Gauguin. My history memory isn't 100% sure there, but I'm pretty sure they did. But you'll see they painted each other during that time, and there's some pretty great paintings by Gauguin of Van Gogh as well. Okay, his nature paintings, I also absolutely love. Like these wild, windblown, lumpy trees. And I think that I read that these are almond blossoms in the upper right-hand corner. Very Japanese looking printmaking influence, right? And I think that might be exactly what we're seeing. So one of the things Van Gogh did that not a lot of other people did is he would paint your everyday people. He would go out and paint people working in the field or paint the field itself. And, you know, people were painting landscapes, but Van Gogh really tried to elevate the everyday person. Remember, painting was mainly for the rich and famous and the aristocracy and the patrons. It wasn't for your average person. So I'm going to click ahead and we'll see why I'm saying that. So he would paint, you know, a woman at a brothel, or he would paint someone sitting at a cafe. And we see other impressionists doing this too. So he wasn't the only one doing that, but definitely one of the pioneers. And one of my favorites, we'll get to that in a minute, is his postman, who he didn't just paint once. Apparently, he painted quite a lot. So remember, as an artist, if you can't pay a model, who's your model? Yourself, right? A lot of self-portraits. Your roommate, maybe it's Gauguin. Your postman, who you can count to come by your house every day, and possibly if you offer him a glass of port or whatever you have on hand, he might sit and let you paint him. Or maybe someone else is sitting in a bar drinking, or maybe someone nursing their child or helping their sick child, or someone who can sit still for you. So we see a lot of that in Van Gogh's work. Speaking of that, so we've all heard that he cut off his ear, right? Kind of, not exactly. He cut off the top of his ear. And there's a crazy story, which I fact-checked before I did this video, because I just wanted to make sure as we learn more things that it's not total nonsense. But I actually learned this from my art history teacher at Alfred University. And I was trying to think of his name. It'll probably come to me. But this painting is apparently they're both of the same woman, but the woman on the right does not look like the woman on the left. So I don't know. But he apparently fell in love with the maid at a brothel. Some articles I read say she was a prostitute. Some say she was the maid at the brothel. Who knows? But anyway, he apparently fell in love with this woman shortly after falling in love with his cousin, and she just spurned him and was not interested in him because he wasn't marriage material, apparently, which, you know, he had no income and he lived off his brother Theo. So pretty true. But this woman had a child. So, you know, an unwed mother at the time, a prostitute, someone or a maid, someone with very little means. And apparently for some reason, Van Gogh was just in love with this woman. And we don't know exactly how it all went down, but we do know that he was very heartbroken surrounding her. So here's the story. At some point, he feels so heartbroken by this woman, and let's actually click ahead and I'll come back to this, that he cuts off the top of his ear. So this is self-portrait with bandage after the ear incident. Here's another one where he's smoking a pipe with the severed ear part, and a great painting to the left as well. Let's go back to that, but I just wanted you to see that. So, yes, it's insane to cut off your ear, and what's more insane is to put it in an envelope or a folded piece of paper and then have it delivered to the person who broke your heart. But there's more to that story. So I fact checked this. So apparently at the time, if there were a bullfight, when the matador had defeated the bull, he would cut off the bull's ear. He would take the ear and he would present it to the woman who he was in love with, or to some woman he wanted to honor in the audience. So a lot of times it was, want to meet me at the cafe later tonight? Here's the bull's ear for you, good looking. It's like Mr. Microphone version of Van Gogh. But so what does that have to do with anything? So the matador would cut off the whole ear, but Van Gogh cut off the top of his ear. He sends it to this woman. So the message he's sending is, you are the beautiful woman, the woman who has stolen my heart, and I present to you the conquest. But wait a minute, there's more to that. He is the conquest. He is the bull that was defeated. So he is the one who is murdered. So the message is a little more complicated. It's, you have destroyed me. You have killed me. And now I give you the symbol of my love. So it's like, you broke my heart, you've killed me, and know that as I present to you the token of my love, which is myself, which is my life, which is twisted and crazy, we can all agree, but it's so poetic and nightmarish all at the same time. I don't know that we've seen a film that really wraps that up, no pun intended, in the way it really could, because it's crazy intense. So if you look at her here holding the child, she looks like she might have been a bit of an older woman. Van Gogh died when he was fairly young, and she just stole his heart. And anyway, that's where the ear story goes. So here we see some of these self-portraits with the self-inflicted injury. I love these portraits. Notice the distortion of the face. Notice the one eye higher than the other. Now, that's also from the tilt of the head. I'm trying to get my head tilted the same way because my camera's reversed. But all that to say is there's some kind of distortion happening here that we see all the time. And we see that high intensity in colors. And look at the painting in the background. Looks like a painting of possibly a print that he might have unwrapped to bolster my story. And I think we also see his own easel in the background. Pretty cool. And I love this one with the pipe. I wish smoking pipes didn't kill you, because it just looks... It's so cool looking to have a pipe. And his hat apparently was cold. So he's inside smoking. I love this one on the left as well. The texture in the hat and the background, it's just, you can feel it. Like you can feel that if you touch that hat, it would have texture to it. And his beard too. Just love it. All right. We talked about how he would paint everyday people. The woman on the left is peeling potatoes. The person on the right is a sower, literally going out and sowing seeds. So he's got a big basket of seeds and he's walking and he's sowing. And I just love the curviness to this figure and the kind of lumpiness to the shoes. And it looks like he's wearing literally traditional wooden clogs. Apparently in Belgium, at least, they're called klompen, which I think is so great, because if you're walking around clomp, 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 they sound like klompen, onomatopoeia, where you sound like what you, the word sounds like what the sound it would make. Very confused description there. All right. Anyway, peeling potatoes, like this isn't royalty. This is, like a scullery maid's job, or just the mom of a family peeling potatoes. And I love that he would portray your everyday life, like someone going out to plant stuff in their field. And in a very, almost a storybook way, like this character is very Johnny Appleseed or something, way before Johnny Appleseed, but really scattering these seeds and planting. And there's just like I said, kind of an animated, cartoonish happiness to it, even though, like I said, all of his paintings kind of have this overwhelming sadness when we do see people. I think when we don't see people, they tend to be less sad. I think the sower doesn't look so sad, but the potato peeler, she doesn't look too happy. And I think this one's called The Potato Eaters. A lot of potatoes. But I love the way these people are painted. Look at the almost Rembrandt-esque color, incredibly high contrast shadows, which we see in a lot of Rembrandt's work. In this Van Gogh painting is known for his intense colors. And look at how crimson the flame is, kind of in a very cartoony way, because flames aren't really red. There's all sorts of things going on. If anything, they're more yellow and orange and blue. But there's kind of this intensity, which pulls us into that center spot. And then we look around at all the faces and notice all the details in the room. Great composition. And I love kind of the people almost look like potato people. Like there's all this lumpiness to them and their eyes are so intense. I'm a big fan of these. Along with this one. So when he would paint people, like I said, there's a lot of times kind of a playfulness to the whole thing. Okay, the postman, he's here. So, and there's a lot of these. There's charcoals and woodcuts and pencil sketches, and you could just look at them all day, but these are some of my favorites. You'll notice that some of the Gauguin paintings I shared, as well as several of the other artists, especially the Impressionists or the Post-Impressionists, would have these floral backgrounds. And there was probably wallpaper behind him, but sometimes you can tell that it was kind of invented. You can see that from wallpaper shot to wallpaper shot, it's definitely different. So I think some of it might have been 100% invented. We're really not sure. But there's just, I think we sense that he really liked this postman because he painted him with such kindness in his eyes, even though there's still kind of that sadness. Kind of a funny story with this one on the right. So I think if Van Gogh was doing album covers for like Joy Division or something, or possibly Tom Waits, maybe this skull smoking a cigarette on the right would have appeared. But in my classroom, I had a student do a presentation on Van Gogh, and he included this skull, which I had never seen the skeleton smoking a cigarette. But I was like, that is so not Van Gogh. I don't know where you found that picture, but it was, at the early ages of the internet. It's like, no, Mr. Ellis, it is. Because when you are looking for artist images of their actual art, you'll have ones that students did of that artist as an assignment or in the style of that artist. And it's really actually difficult to fact check which ones are really by this artist. So I was sure that this was a mistake, and I checked it out, and it is by Van Gogh, and I actually love it. It's so intense and bold, and there's kind of this orange browns in the bones. They're not just your traditional white. And the reason I included all these shoes in the same image, in the same slide with these other images, is there's kind of that earthiness and that humanity, that worn, well-loved element to all of these shoes that kind of like we see in that skeleton with all that texture and the browns and greens and grays and oranges in there. And I just think they're masterfully painted. Like I said, it's not that they're photorealistic, but you could touch them and know exactly how they would feel and possibly how they would smell, right? Okay, and we're kind of to the end of my Van Gogh, back to my big painting of Van Gogh. So this piece on wood panel is still available. I also have paper giclée prints of different sizes of these, as well as I can do canvas giclées, and I even have a Van Gogh poster. I might even have a Van Gogh t-shirt. I don't know. I have lots of different things on my website if you're interested in anything. I also teach. I'm going to put this image up here for a second. I also teach beginning to advanced drawing. So if you have any interest in learning how to draw realistically, check out the link below that I'll post to my website. I show some of my students' progress. I show where they drew before I taught them anything and how much they improved after about 2 to 3 months of teaching. And that's, at a school, a little bit of a slower pace. If you have more time than that, you can progress even faster. But I think you might be surprised at how much you can improve. So anyway, I've been teaching art for 30 years, and I'm also, as you can see, an active artist. But if you would like to become my student, that's a possibility. And I have different levels you can subscribe to, but I even have a free 2-part lesson that you can do on my website if you sign up for my mailing list. So if you want to check that out, you can. All right. So Vincent van Gogh, inspirational, I think, both because successful artist with mental illness, with very little privilege in life, literally very, very hungry, trying to choose between a meal and making art, not successful, but driven to continue to make his art because it was who he was. And the whole mystery around his death, was he murdered? Was it a suicide? His incredibly broken heart, and his example of love that's both a twisted, sad, and beautiful story, as well as the images he's given us that are so well loved by so many of us. So hopefully that will inspire you as well. All right. If you like this, please subscribe, give it a thumbs up, and check out some of my other videos. Thanks so much. Tim Ellis, over and out.